Hi, this is Kathy Pabst, and welcome to our podcast for the IDD Resource Guide. We have Terry Furby here. Terry has previous experience working with kids in a secure care setting, and we figured he would have lots of insight that would show us the gap, or not too much of a gap, between secure care settings and the IDD community. Thank you for being here, Terry.
Thanks.
What can you tell us about your experience and responsibilities working supporting kids in this industry?
So I've worked with youth for about 21 years. I worked from regular floor staff to skills development or skills. I, I taught skills to youth, and then I was a unit manager in a facility. Um, yeah, so I've seen quite a bit over the 21 years.
And what was the the age group that you worked with?
So we could get them as young as 13, and we could hold them until they were 25.
And in that age group, did you notice any big gaps or any um, what I'm wondering about is any differences in diagnosis between the younger group and the older group, whether or not they were diagnosed or not
Um,
with the IDD, with IDD.
So usually they came in when they're younger. They just might have a longer time when they were there. So they would come in. Probably about 10% came in with diagnosis before they even came into the system. Um, there was probably another 10% that was diagnosed when they after they got there, and then there was another percentage, probably another 10% that had no
Wow.
diagnosis at all while they were there.
So a lot of it was staff being educated enough to recognize that this child was not was undiagnosed or misdiagnosed.
Yeah, a lot of it was staff. There were mental health professionals on each unit, so each one had like one mental health professional would have probably like 3 units, anywhere from 25 to 32 residents on the unit.
Mhm.
So that's a pretty big group to work
Yeah.
with at once. So people did slip through the cracks. Um, some of the youth that were IDD were a little more street smart, so it didn't present itself as much.
Oh, that's interesting. A little bit more street smarts. Do you think that was because they had to survive on their own more?
A lot of it is like their home life, going into foster homes. It's just building all these walls and just learning. So when you're in a facility or a foster home and stuff, I one of the things I noticed over the years is they'll sit there and they watch and they mimic. So
Mm.
they see what works for people and what doesn't work for people.
Wow, that's interesting. Do you did you notice a lot big difference between what might have been behaviors and being actually undiagnosed with IDD and having to
So that's where it gets a
mm,
little tricky, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with it.
right.
Is be able to separate the two. And a lot of it is just taking your time, even whether you're working with someone with behavior youth or someone who's IDD. I kind of approach it the same way,
Mm,
because a lot of it is when you're dealing with it, there's always some underlying thing. A lot of times for behavior, there's always an underlying thing. For IDD, there's underlying behavior, the thing. So it's just taking the time and being patient and working through what needs to be worked through and giving them time to process what you're working with them with.
and a lot of these kids, were they with biological parents or adoptive parents or foster?
But the majority of them were with foster parents.
Could you see the difference in each group?
Sometimes it just depends, like, because even like some foster homes are great.
Hmm.
Some of them are not. It's just like home life. Some of them are great and some of them are not. One of the biggest things that helped me when I started working with youth and stuff is this older guy told me, he goes, like, it'd be like a 13, 14-year-old youth. He goes, it took him 14 years to get this way. We're not going to change him overnight.
That's so true.
So,
That is exactly. So it teaches you patience.
yeah,
So
you got to have a lot of patience.
you have to have a lot of patience. And then how would you notice the difference when they first got to you, maybe, and how would you approach winning their trust?
So, a lot of it is just going in and taking the time, sitting down and talking with them and listening to them. Most
Mhm.
people have something to say,
Mhm.
and giving them the time to say it instead of interrupting them. And it was hard for me to keep my mouth shut because I like to tell people how to fix things.
Mhm.
So it's just giving them time to process and figure out what to say and how to say it.
And I could see how that'd be beneficial because a lot of times they probably didn't know how to express their emotions with verbally.
Right. So a lot of them, this was a whole new setting for them to be able to talk and tell what's going on with them, how they're feeling and stuff,
Mhm.
and they didn't know how to express that, and just kind of guiding them through that process, not telling them how to do it, but because they have to figure out their own process, but just kind of guiding them through them and reassuring them and helping them get through the process.
It's kind of interesting because did they needed help to use their verbal skills, but maybe they didn't have people that actually wanted to listen before.
That is a lot of it. Everybody's just seems so busy.
Hmm.
So if someone wasn't acting out and being a problem, and this was really early on when I started working with youth, if they weren't acting out and being a problem, they didn't get attention.
Yeah. And that's really common too in IDD community also, because a lot of times they notice if I have a negative behavior, then I get attention, and maybe any attention is good attention.
Right. And like it comes down to it's a learned behavior.
Hmm.
Um, but that's where it came back to is like it's really important to encourage and like when noticing the small stuff, the small changes. Like let's say little Johnny never never stayed all day in school and then they go to school all day. You have to acknowledge that.
Kind of reward and acknowledge it.
So everybody calls it a reward, but everybody likes to be told they're doing a good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody, I don't care who you are, everybody likes to be told they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
So it's just making sure that we're doing that. And it is for like me and you, it's more the bigger stuff that we're going to get rewarded for.
Hmm.
But for a youth, it's acknowledging that small stuff.
It makes small things are big.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big reaction.
Because what we might see as small, they might see as a huge accomplishment.
It's all perception.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. Did you find, and I just was just thinking about this, that putting them in activities, arts, sports, anything like that would help?
Oh, definitely. So we had art classes, we had regular school, we had college, we had a workforce program, but we also had like recreational, like where they did pottery, they did drawing, and everything like that. And then it comes back to like I was talking to my friend the other day. He wants to get in and he wants to volunteer, but he doesn't know how. He goes, "Well, how do I do it?" And I said, "Okay, you're a great baseball player. You played baseball for years. Coach a team." He goes, well, that's not directly impacting the IDD community. It doesn't have to directly impact the IDD community. It's just impacting youth themselves.
That's exactly right.
It's all about planting that seed of doing good and being positive team members. And so let's say you might have no one on your team that's IDD, but teaching those skills to other youth that could plant a seed to help them work with an IDD youth.
Kind of be a role model.
Yeah.
And that does help instead of, we were talking earlier about how sometimes they might do negative behaviors just to belong?
Yeah, so a lot of times what we noticed, like when youth came in, they they would they want to fit in with their peer group and everything else, and they would get hooked up with a group that was doing bad things.
Hmm.
So they would mimic those behaviors to fit in.
And not necessarily realize
They
that.
did, and a lot of times they didn't realize the consequences of what they were doing.
Wow. Wow. And then what ways have you noticed in all the years that you've been doing this 20, oh, well, this would have been a 20, 30 year span. Have you noticed things change from your first beginnings in this industry to now?
So when I first started out, it was it was a rough, it was, we're going to tell you how to act, we're going to show you what to do, and this is what you're going to do. And now it's more going in, like when I quit working, well, I still work in the industry, but in a different capacity. But like when I stopped working with youth, it was more like, okay, we would have treatment programs and stuff, but we had the youth involved in the treatment program. Okay, what is working for you and what is not working for you?
Mm.
What is going to benefit you? What's not going to benefit you?
So they were more being brought in as being part of their plan.
Yeah, so collaborative problem solving did a big change in like working with youth.
I could see that. And so instead of, like you said, it's not telling them what to do, but it's making them involved in the process.
Yeah, so you have a group of people instead of just this group of people making the decisions for you. Now you're a part of the decision with this group of people voicing you. So they're getting a voice in it.
More successful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Ah, that's interesting. And then what are other ways that you would say society can help bridge the gap between at-risk youth?
So I think the biggest thing is just educating yourself, being more involved, um, and just taking the time to care. Like if you see something, if you see someone struggling, help them out.
That could go so far,
Yeah.
very far, I would say. That is interesting. And then as far as policies and procedures, what are ways that maybe the state could add on that could help benefit them?
So a lot of times with the state, all of it comes down to funding.
Right.
Um, I mean, they're doing the best they can with what they have.
Hmm.
Um, so it's just be able to get that funding and get the support from the community, get the support from the state, from federal aid and everything else, and taking the time to research and develop and create these programs to help these youth.
Do you notice a increase in numbers that were diagnosed later with IDD?
So I don't know if they really increased or if, like a lot of it, I didn't notice a lot of it when I first started. With time and growing up and educating myself and everything, I started noticing stuff more and started noticing the small things. And that's the big thing is noticing the small things to be able to capitalize on them.
That's true. And the world has changed so much that we're all more aware of tools and techniques that we can use now.
Yeah, I mean, you could go on YouTube and look up, you know, Johnny's throwing cars across a room. What's some different ways to help them stop doing it?
Mm-hmm.
You'll pull up on, there might be 20 YouTube videos showing you. I mean, not everything's going to work for every youth,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just taking the time and trying them. So everybody says, well, you can't just try and experiment with youth and da 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 da. But if nothing's working for this one, you have to try. That's the biggest thing is when people stop trying.
That's exactly right. And I don't think before I ever heard years ago positive behavior techniques,
Right.
and now it's
Yeah.
very common.
So I know they got really big in with like rewards, like um, so even the state got wrapped up in this, like, okay, Johnny did good in school. He never did good in school. Now we're going to give him this.
Mm-hmm.
I got more out of just sitting there and talking to them about what they did and telling them what they did was so great than giving them something.
They felt like they were heard and seen.
Yeah, so yeah, they got something like this immediate reward that they wanted, but sitting there and talking for someone to sit there and talk to them and acknowledge them and spend time with them, I think was a bigger reward for them.
I absolutely agree. Sometimes, whether it be IDD or whether it be at a youth care facility, there's so many commonalities that and a lot of techniques that can be used for either one that um, they're more similar than they're not.
Yeah. Um, so this may, I don't know if this is going to sound right, but just working with people in general,
Mhm.
and it comes back to the whole adage, treat people how you want to be treated.
Mhm.
There's a lot of truth in that.
Very much.
Yeah, I don't want to be yelled at. I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want to this. So if I'm doing that to someone else, I should expect the same reaction that I'm going to have to it.
It's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Let's see. What else did we have? Did you ever, well, no, no. Did you ever notice reoccurring patterns such as trauma, poverty, or school struggles that overlapped, with undiagnosed IDD?
I think a lot of them, yeah. Some of them, no. Some of them came from great homes and stuff. They just got mixed in with the wrong group and got in trouble. Some of them, a lot of them you notice though were like they were being bounced around in foster homes because they could, so they get bounced around or they run or whatever, and people just get tired of them, so they got shifted around. They had no
Wow.
money, so the easiest way to get money is take it.
Still, yeah. Do you think maybe an early intervention program would have helped make things easier?
I think so. In the school, like especially starting in school, I think that's really where we need to really like target is like getting them diagnosed, dealing, helping them in school, um, giving everybody the best education that we can.
Hmm.
Everybody's not going to get the same education because everybody has different levels, but
Hmm.
getting them the best education that we can give them for their skill level.
I love that. Yep. What would you say is something that the some of the kids have taught you that you wish everybody knew?
So the most important thing I think everybody taught me was patience. I was not a patient person. I will admit that. I really wanted. I like to get stuff done. I wanted to just go through it. Um, Having patience, giving them time to process, letting them walk through the steps, and not doing it for them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because if you do it for them, they don't learn. No one learns anything, um, and then you just start back over at square one because they've learned nothing. They haven't learned how to process this, whatever situation that they're in.
I love it. Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.